The economic practices and theories that came out of humankind's move to an urban way of life, and that throughout history have evolved to more free, open, and individually driven forms, provide us with the background to explore contemporary economic ideology. This is Session 3, Socialism, in a companion course titled Economics of Fulfillment, and that is an aspect of a larger view, evolution of consciousness theory. In today's global economy, the millennia-old play between market forces and central control unfolds through two predominant economic doctrines. Anchored in the writings of Marx and the early socialist philosophers, we have socialism. Anchored in the writings of Adam Smith and the early classical economists, we have capitalism. To better understand the global economy of today, we need to look at how each of these systems of economic belief and practice works. In this session, we begin with the most basic of the two, socialism. Socialism and capitalism are, in the minds of many, different and in opposition, but they rest on a common interpretation of the world. As we have discussed, both are grounded in the notion that resources are, by nature, limited, and human material wants are, by nature, unlimited. Both are a derivative of humankind's move to an urban way of life. Beyond the supposition that resources are limited and human material wants are unlimited, both also operate within a larger sphere of reality. Though often disregarded, both operate within the framework of who we are as human beings, within the structure of human nature. No matter its form, an economy functions by way of our work, our energy, our dreams, our ambition, our skill, our drive, and our knowledge. The human being is at the core of economic activity, and we are creative beings. Economic activity is the expression of our creative power, of human creativity. Fundamentally, what other than human creativity can underlie economic activity? Moreover, human creativity takes place within the individual. Corporations do not invent products. Individuals who work for corporations invent products. Government does not provide services. Individuals who work for government provide services. Machines may produce cars and microcircuits, but men and women design, build, and maintain the machines. As some say, it takes a village, but a village cannot exist without its members. Humanity engages in economic activity in diverse ways, through diverse tools, and to achieve diverse ends. The creative activity that underlies the myriad forms of humankind's economic expression, and the ability to align our creative energy with the creative energy of others, to achieve ends greater than we could achieve on our own, however, exists where it can only exist, within each of us. Economic function comes down to the individual. For the individual to contribute to the economy, one other factor must come into play. You and I must have freedom. To express our creative vision and energy, we need room to work. We need space for the cycles and thresholds and the trial and error of the creative process to unfold. In economic terms, we need resources and opportunity. Only when the individual has the resources and opportunity to invent, to reach out to others, to organize and inspire, does creativity burst forth. For an economy to work, the individual must have self-determination. In its theoretically pure form, socialism is based on the notion that we can best develop and allocate scarce resources by communal regulation of the means to produce and distribute wealth. In the socialist scheme, the individual creates goods and services in accordance with the governmentally determined needs of the community, which, in the strict socialist ideal, owns and controls the farms, factories, and other means of production. The individual, then, turns over the wealth he or she produces to the community, which gives back what it feels the individual needs to subsist and continue to produce. Economic needs are assessed, economic activities are planned, and economic resources are allocated through central control, directed by government. One might think that in a planned economy, it would be easy to meet everyone's needs. The government, or some regulatory body, simply mandates what to produce and how it should be distributed. In practice, this has not been the case, for a simple reason. To be human is to be creative. We are driven to grow and learn, to build a better life for ourselves and for our families. In a socialist economy, we do not exist to better our situation in life, but to occupy a niche in the economic machine of the state. Our motivation is social conformity. We exist to fulfill our role in society and in the economy. By virtue of its centrally administered design, a socialist system disregards our creative nature, human nature. A socialist system stifles the freedom necessary for the individual to output the creative expression on which economic activity is based. Consequently, and as history has shown, socialist governments are forced to demand social conformity and economic output. The leaders of the Soviet Union imposed strict quotas on the output of farms and factories, and workers and managers who failed to meet these quotas were often dealt with brutally. To maintain the stability and output of the state, Stalin in the Soviet Union executed or instituted policies that led to the death of an estimated 40 million citizens and dissidents. In China's Communist Revolution, Mao Zedong executed or instituted policies that led to the death of an estimated 60 million citizens and dissidents. Socialism is central control. In an ideologically driven socialist society, rulers go to extreme lengths to maintain that control. By its nature, a centrally administered economy restricts the creative initiative of the individual. Why work to build a better life when no matter the effort you expend, the outcome is the same, what the state gives back? By virtue of its collectivist design, socialism restricts individual freedom and creativity. As such, it is a limited way to conduct our economic affairs. What socialist nation exists without a black market? The collective farms of the former Soviet Union were vast, but a disproportionate share of the nation's food was produced on tiny plots workers were permitted to cultivate for themselves. In the 1980s, China's leaders realized that socialism could not survive in an ideologically pure form and opened their economy to business and investment. Concurrently, Western leaders felt that investment in China and an opening of the Chinese economy would bring about an end of communism in that nation. Has time shown this assessment to be correct? As the collapse of the Soviet Union and the stagnation of Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, and other predominantly socialist nations make clear, the restricted freedom and creativity of the individual, inherent in a centrally controlled economy, is a design flaw with an outcome. Invariably, in a socialistic economy, economic activity will wind down, and as China's rulers hope to prevent, in the end collapse. To paraphrase Great Britain's Margaret Thatcher, socialism only works until you run out of the other guy's money to spend. It is popular to equate socialism with government entitlements and to embrace the socialist ideal as benevolent in nature. The health, education, and other benefits we enjoy and conveniently label as socialism, however, only embrace the socialist model in part. Social programs redistribute a portion of a nation's wealth. That wealth, however, is not produced through a centrally controlled mechanism. Such a mechanism would lead to a decline in the creation of wealth. It is produced through a free market mechanism. The private sector generates wealth, and the public sector redistributes a portion of that wealth, ideally in a way that makes it easier for the individual to express his or her creativity and contribute to the economy. Some refer to Sweden, Denmark, and other progressive European nations as socialist. Leaders of these nations take exception with the socialist label, often vocally. The so-called socialist nations of Europe have made the choice to offer their citizens benefits administered through the public sector. They have learned, however, that to fund these benefits, they must maintain a robust, private sector economy. Traditionally, Switzerland has ranked at, or near the top, on the list of the world's most business-friendly nations. Certain activities are best dealt with in a centralized manner. Fire, police, military, and the nation's highway system come to mind. With the promise of ever-increasing benefits and entitlements, however, politicians who tout socialism forget the obvious. To redistribute wealth in a socialistic way, you must create wealth to redistribute. in that socialism is a centrally controlled form of economics and is looked on favorably in certain academic and political circles. Those who seek power find it convenient to embrace the socialist ideology. Has not every so-called radical identified with the socialist ideal? Has not every counterculture movement been sold to the masses by the promise of a collectivist good? As individuals, it is our obligation to think with a critical mind, to study and ponder, to question all that we read, hear, and are taught. It is our duty to challenge the political persuasion, every political persuasion. Is socialism a benevolent form of economics? Do we have a duty to challenge those who tout socialism as such? Do we have a right to reject their calls for a proletarian revolution? In light of our evolution of consciousness understanding of the universe, and our notion that human society has evolved to less collective forms, does socialism denote an advance toward greater freedom and creativity, or a step back to lesser freedom and creativity? With our look at socialism, we complete session 3, in our course titled Economics of Fulfillment. We have the background to delve into today's second dominant economic ideology. Our course on the economics of tomorrow continues in session 4, Capitalism.